Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett. Tony Kinnett.
The host of the Tony Kinnett cast.
Let's have a show.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome. A very fine Friday to you, and as well, a very, very busy May here. Good to see you. We've got a ton of stuff to dive into this evening, so we're glad that you are joining us for the up and top of the line news story for the evening. Six more states are getting in on the redistricting pile. So since 2024, we've already had 7 other states that have piled into this little redistricting fiesta. California, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, Texas, Utah, and Virginia. And some of them are based on more partisan lines, meaning that the state legislature intervened, said, no, we're not going to do this whole independent bipartisan board. We're not going to wait for a census. In Texas case, actually reworking a couple of districts because they were previously racially gerrymandered and then flipping that around to make it a more partisan gerrymandering. California also getting in on that ground floor. Well, now after the Supreme Court's decision, in which they said, hey, Louisiana, you can't do that whole, what's the right word for it here? That map that you have. In fact, this particular map that looks like a dolphin throwing up. You can't do this. You can't racially segregate in your voting districts. Not a thing, not something you're allowed to do. And so Louisiana's governor said, hey, well, then we're going to go ahead and pause primaries because people deserve to actually get a couple of minutes to talk with their new congressional candidate. Now, there's a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth. I know, I watched it in person, in which people have suggested voters are being disenfranchised somehow by the primary being pushed back. No. In fact, it's probably going to be more beneficial for Democrats for primaries to be pushed back a couple of weeks in a couple of states we're going to talk about here, given a lot of sentiment on the left to think that they can get out there and, as Kamala Harris put it here in a second, be ruthless. So there are a couple of other states that are joining the fray. At 2:35 p.m. Eastern today, Governor Kay Ivey of Alabama said, quote, regarding our own pending redistricting litigation, I remain hopeful that Alabama will receive a favorable outcome from the U.S. Supreme Court, which is why I'm now calling on a special session of the Alabama legislature. Couple of things here. A lot of these redistricting sessions are not guaranteed yet. So Virginia has a 4-way uphill battle with their blue-leaning gerrymander. The reason is that they did a couple of things, 4 to be precise, that are probably not allowed. 2 of those 4. Number 1, they made the decision to introduce the redistricting measure as part of a special session that had nothing to do with redistricting. According to the Constitution of Virginia, of that Commonwealth, that's not allowed. Don't look at me. I didn't write those rules. That would be the old original House of Burgesses. Number 2, the Virginia legislature, when writing the constitutional amendment for people to vote on in that ballot referendum, they wrote a Facebook terms and services agreement. Essentially, it's like Mr. Burns would write from The Simpsons. The idea that you would write, well, if you believe in democracy and fairness and sunshine and kitties, then vote for this. They didn't actually pitch in a commonly understood way, much less someone voting in perhaps a different language or if that kind of a ballot was available. According to former Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, Virginia's in some trouble. Alabama, on the other hand, they can't move forward with a special session today and enact new maps because they're still pending the litigation that was kind of along Louisiana's same lines. Now, again, this has a lot of individuals over on the left side of the aisle losing their McMarbles because if Democrats are not allowed to have special racially segregated voting districts in the South or anywhere across the country, can I get a J.B. Pritzker? Then you're going to see at least 12 seats that were firmly in Democrat control now be redrawn. Again, not guaranteeing Republican victories, but certainly seeing a major shift in the individuals that are likely to hold those future seats. And of course, this kind of stuff we've talked about before. Now joining, of course, we talked about Florida, who passed out of their state legislature a new redistricting map. And I think we have that one up too. Tennessee's also considering, but we'll get back to them in a second here. This is Florida's new map for those who are on the air. If you're listening to this via podcast or radio, imagine a map with a lot of red chunks. So again, as we've talked about before, when Republicans push a redistricting or a gerrymandering scheme, it is usually in blocks and chunks. Now, there's a little bit of, some Jenga tiles kind of thrown in there now as well, especially with Tennessee. But when Democrats, at least in today's day and age, are trying to gerrymander already gerrymandered states, again, like Illinois, which is already seriously super duper gerrymandered, or California, which is also already super duper gerrymandered, you get some extremely, extremely convoluted maps. Now, there's already a case to be made that Illinois can't change their map any further, but if they did, they would gain 3 seats. So it turns out when you've already gerrymandered everything all to hell and gone, there's nowhere else to go. Again, when you give the schizophrenic toddler a Mountain Dew and then a blue-colored pencil, the kind of maps that you're going to get are just a little interesting. Mississippi and South Carolina now are also joining that fray. So at 3:13 p.m., Governor Henry McMaster of South Carolina, who had originally said, no, thank you, I'm good on the whole redistricting thing, he released a statement in which he said, quote, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld South Carolina's current congressional map in 2024, but in light of the court's most recent decision on the Voting Rights Act, it would be appropriate for the General Assembly to ensure that South Carolina's congressional map still complies with all requirements of federal law and the U.S. Constitution. There are a lot of states that have previously upheld maps or chose not to redistrict. Now that the Supreme Court of the United States has reframed things, you're going to see some differently drawn districts. There are a couple of questions, for example, regarding my home state of Indiana, which if you look at the congressional district right smack dab in the center of the state, Andre Carson's district, you could suggest that there are a couple of lines drawn in that district that may be drawn based on original allegations of redlining before the Jim Crow era had come to an end. Now, that brings us to the last contenders here. Georgia is also throwing their hat into the ring. So according to a Supreme Court wire report just an hour ago exactly, quote, Georgia tells the 11th Circuit Court that the Calais requirement, Calais being the Louisiana case about getting rid of racial segregated districts, that Calais requires a prompt reversal of a previous order at the federal court level that struck down Georgia's congressional and legislative maps under that racial segregation Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So Georgia's also likely to be getting new maps, Tennessee as well, and that means something really special for you, me, and Dupree. It's going to be a very, very annoying couple of months. And that is both good and bad for both parties. So everyone who is in, right now, a political base is very energized because both parties are currently in the attitude of believing, at least in the base, the core who are on every single day following the politics of their particular parties, that the other side is going do or die on this, and so will they. And again, that's not just my opinion here. The former and present leadership of the party is making that case. The House Judiciary Democrats released kind of a weird explainer, sort of, about this. Representative Troy Carter and then old Jamie Raskin himself. The old Jamie Rascal got out there and tried to make some sense over this. You'll have to judge for yourself here. Sorry, well, actually, I want to make sure we get the right Jamie Raskin getting all rascally and aggravated up here first. Should be Troy Carter. Here you go.
Here's a jar of jelly beans. Tell me how many are in it, and I'll let you vote.
Hey, everybody, it's Congressman.
So we're off to a good start. Here's a jar of jelly beans. Tell me how many jelly beans are in the jar, and then we'll do a diabetes sugar test here. Bad way to start. That's a poll tax joke, by the way. So we're already starting strong by suggesting there are now additional hurdles for black people to jump over in order to vote, which is not true. Bad start, but we'll let old Jamie Rascals see if he can save it here.
And Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. I'm here with my friend Troy Carter, who represents the 2nd District, who's been a great fighter for civil rights, for civil liberties, for democracy through this period. And I wanted him to come and talk about what's actually going on in Louisiana.
Yesterday, the Supreme Court issued a devastating blow to our democracy.
They did not. Radio crew will send you guys to the commercial. We'll see if we can kind of dig through the weeds over here on the live stream where commercials don't necessarily throw everything into the mix, but we'll catch you guys on the other side of it. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. So we're starting strong. You know, we've got the Supreme Court is issuing a blow to democracy. It's exciting stuff.
And while the case, Louisiana v. Calais, speaks specifically to Louisiana, the ramifications go way, way deeper, much further, much wider. Louisiana represents roughly 33% African-American population. Well, basic math, we have 6 members of Congress. It makes sense that 2 of them would be representative of the demographics.
No, that's not how Congress works. There's this silly, stupid idea that comes from a lot of people in the country who deeply and truly believe that Congress is actually supposed to be some magical demographic representation. No. That's not how this is supposed to work, because it doesn't make any sense. Just because and I've used this example before, there is a Swiss immigrant community that came over to the state of Indiana from the mid-1800s through the early 1900s and settled in Bern, Indiana. And that's in the northeastern portion of the state. Just because there are a lot of people in that area of Swiss descent doesn't mean that the Swiss people automatically get a congressman. It's ridiculous to assume that a state should have equal the number of men and women in Congress. It's silly to think that because 14% of your population may be in the service industry, then therefore you need somebody who's been, working the counter or working at a hotel to be a congressperson. Because this percentage is in manufacturing, you need this many percentages. You can't do that kind of math. That's silly. And by the way, this is one of the reasons I argue that it's curious that this only ever seems to go one way for the Democrats. So they'll get out there and suggest that, if there's 33%, 0.3, repeating, of course, we've got Leroy Jenkins style math going on here. Black people in the state, then we need this number of individuals. Well, then what constitutes as black? Are we still counting people who are half black? If somebody is half black and half Latino, do we mix and match here? Do we bring out the Sherwin-Williams paint cards? Start holding it up? That's ridiculous. And then, of course, you'll never hear them talk anything, at least in this kind of a conversation, about the number of Republicans and Democrats that are represented at the state legislature and then, of course, at the federal government. Again, the Founding Fathers did not care about ratios of representation like this. And they were shot down whenever they were presented. So garbage arguments right off the bat, not doing too strong, not doing too hot. Making this suggestion, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the younger socialist side, she's also suggesting now, because the gerrymandering is going against her. Again, cheering for Virginia, cheering for California, never had an issue with the old Illinois map, never had an issue with the New York map, never had an issue with the Massachusetts map, or all of New England, for that matter. AOC suddenly announces there needs to be a ban on gerrymandering, which is just like saying universal health care. What does that mean? What are you actually suggesting here? When you say banning gerrymandering, what are you proposing that's going to stop this? We'll explain after she gets done here with her little promise and proposal. Them
to just hide that intent instead of actually address and prevent and protect Americans' voting rights who are at risk, and especially communities, I think, in the South of the United States, but it really affects every American across the country.
Sure. Okay, so she's saying that this is bad because there are communities in the South who don't get a voice. I don't know if you guys know this. This is kind of a crazy thing. There are a lot of cities in the United States that have Republicans living in them, that have different communities living in them, who are not the stereotypical Jasmine Crockett idea of who inhabits inner cities, that aren't technically represented, if you want to go this way. I mean, I don't see her crying any tears for them. So she's going to do the race card, but then she's going to try to bring it around with, well, actually, it's for every person. So here's her suggestion.
New York respond in kind by doing its own redistricting once if the amendment passes.
I have long felt that we all have to play by the same set of rules.
Oh,
And
yes. Okay.
the Republican caucus has made it very clear that they want and are setting rules of partisan gerrymandering. The Democratic caucus.
Right. Yeah, Republicans invented partisan gerrymandering. I've heard this one before. Doesn't necessarily hold any water historically whatsoever, but we'll hear out.
Has tried to pass nonpartisan gerrymandering for 10 years. Republicans have rejected it. And so we have to all abide by the same rules. And so if Republicans are going to redraw North Carolina, if they're going to redraw Texas, if they're going to redraw and gerrymander every one of their states, then unfortunately, we have to provide balance to that.
Excellent stuff. Ray, we've got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. Don't go anywhere. Lots more tonight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
I'll be the one you see.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
It's gonna be me.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. So we've really just brought our worst. Everyone is bringing their worst. And I'm not joking. The Republicans, so far, we have Senator John Thune, who has ordered other Republicans not to talk about getting rid of the filibuster, not to talk about anything at all. That's the orders from the Senate Majority Leader for Republicans, which means it doesn't matter what the House of Representatives does, doesn't matter what Speaker of the House Mike Johnson does, because nothing's going to pass. So Republicans are essentially counting on, at this point, Trump's executive orders carrying them through, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, because John Thune says, well, I mean, come on, hey. So that's the Republican side. What about the Democrats? So right now you have some leaders, like some of the institutional leaders, and then you've got the new upstarts who are very, very special indeed. So first of all, we bring in a little redistricting conversation here. Kamala Harris is back, boys and girls. Let's go. Now, she has quadrupled her chances at winning the 2028 Democrat presidential primary to a whopping, incredible, massive, titular 8%. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Be the impressed. And she's back with all of the tools in her arsenal. Awkward giggling, random points to nowhere, and of course, the brilliant public speaking and oratory style that would make Michael Scott green with envy. So first of all, Kamala has decided now is the time. We finally reached the moment. Amid all of the redistricting, she finally cares about the Constitution.
But as we all here know, the Constitution will not defend itself. And while many of us have sworn an oath to defend the Constitution, what is of equal importance is the action we take to defend the Constitution of the United States.
So in case you weren't following the awkward spaghetti salad, she suggested that the Constitution won't defend itself, and so she's not just going to say she defends the Constitution, she's going to do the doing of the defense of the Constitution. Now, sure, she never did that once as a California Attorney General. She never did that once as a Senator of the United States. She constantly called the Constitution a worthless document that had nothing of substance that shouldn't be changed over time. So, no. And then, of course, as vice president, we all know how well she did as a border czar. And her promises to completely gut several portions of the Constitution once she was president of the United States, her day one promises, for example. So that's bad enough already, not exactly doing too well. Then we get to what may be some of my favorite rhetoric from Kamala. Kamala's got to appeal to voters because right now, Republicans are just kind of doing nothing in the Congress. So she's got to make a pitch. She has to make a pitch to voters to get Democrats through the midterms and then through to the next election cycle. So what do? Well, you got to tell Democrat voters that they are dumb and stupid and poor. I wish I was joking. I don't recommend this as a strategy. She begins by suggesting the same tired crap that even Chuck Schumer's not trotting out anymore, that women are too dumb to get their driver's license and birth certificate in the same room. Here you go.
If you are one of the 60+ million women in America who changed your name when you were married, you are going to find it much more difficult to prove your identity when your birth certificate doesn't match your driver's license.
Sources do trust me. There's nothing at all in what she's suggesting that's true there. Why? Because you do, in fact, need to match your identification in a couple of different ways, not to mention for tax purposes after you get married. And one of the reasons that we know this is because there were a series of op-eds written by kind of the younger folk who were recently married who realized that they kind of needed a couple of documents after they had gotten married and changed their names and then gone through the tax process this year. We got to gaslight. We got to turn it up to 11.
And have to go through the bureaucracy of that, obviously trying to make it more difficult for people to vote. The man comes down with an executive order around voting by mail. By the way, who votes at his spa at Mar-a-Lago consistently? And then there was the issue that I would discuss in each one of these events about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. No, they have had an agenda that has been in place for decades to get to this very moment and beyond, which is to make it so difficult for the people to vote.
Okay, so here's her first premise. The reason I play this clip is because after this moment, she says the exact opposite of what she's saying right now. And it's really hilarious. So there are a thing in politics, there is a consistent understanding. There's something you look for. If you push too far, then you give your opponent the ability to push back harder, because the effect is made clear on those who disagree with you on the policy. You're like, hey, I don't like Joe Biden's this policy. And then the pendulum swings back with momentum. So Kamala Harris suggests that making voting really, really difficult is going to convince a lot of people not to come out and vote. That's her case, that it's going to be so difficult that, oh man, these black people are too dumb to figure out how to vote. Oh, they could never, because that's the contention she made regarding Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the need for racially segregated districts. The same with women. Women are too dumb to know, oh, my name is different. I never thought about this before. That's her contention. But then when she moves on, because it's really demoralizing to say, you all are stupid and unmotivated. It's essentially like a high school dad baseball coach trying to get his son to lose weight. That's the Kamala Harris approach here. So she's going to pivot completely around here, and that's going to bring us to the next group.
That they won't, because they know the people are not stupid and see the corrupt, incompetent, callous administration that is in the White House right now. And they're so damn scared. They're so damn scared of losing the midterms.
See, she's really cool because she said damn twice. I mean, we got a regular beaver going on up there, man. Man, those waterways are terrified.
And part of what I heard in her poem, which I just heard for the first time when we all did, but one has to ask, why did they do it this quickly? And I would tell.
Okay, so she's already pivoted away. So she makes the case that it's really demoralizing for people to come out to vote, and then flips it around and says, all this has done is made us more angry and determined to vote. So this is why originally when I brought up the point of Louisiana and the district and pushing back the primary, this is not as bad for Democrats as they are making it out to be. But by rolling over and playing dead, and then calling everyone on their own side of the aisle, and even individuals not in their party, too dumb or stupid to do anything about it, and then claiming they've got a lot of anger and momentum, what does that actually look like? Because what they're suggesting is this isn't actually anger and momentum that's going to show up at the ballot box. And the answer is the young base of the party is where this energy is supposed to manifest. And this is where, this right here, this is where you're going to see the really awkward and awful people step up to the plate. Radio crew will send you over to the commercial, and try not to be too awkward and awful while we're gone. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. So then Kamala gets out her angry eyes. She borrows them from Cory Booker, and she says, it's time to get ruthless, guys. We're going to get tough. Here we go. Kamala, girl power. We're going to fight.
And what do you say to a room full of lawyers and advocates who are going to have to figure out what comes next?
Okay, being very candid.
Please.
This was supposed to happen in June. This is how they play. They are strategic, they think long term, and they are ruthless.
First of all, if you think Republicans look ahead long term, no, we don't. No, we don't. The American public as a whole does not look long term to almost anything. It is a critical failure of both parties in this country. So, no. But she's, the Republican is the thing is they're ruthless. Yeah, ruthless. Okay.
And part of what I am saying tonight, and if there's press in the room, I don't care if you quote me, we have to be ruthless too.
Oh, you go, girl. We have to be ruthless too. We have to be rootin', tootin', ready for moot. I mean, great. Excellent. Thank you very much, Kamala. Very special. Well, they do in fact have a couple of angry individuals out there to call for some rather interesting things. So on the Los Angeles side of things, of course, you have the youths, you have those out there who are calling for policy, making it very clear, sure, Republicans are accusing individuals in largely blue areas of a lot of illegal voting practices, of census manipulation, of perhaps ballot harvesting with illegal immigrants. And then you have people like LA Councilman Hugo Soto Martinez just out there saying, look, you know what's really not fair? Not letting illegals vote anyway. We ought to do something about this. So again, here is that very open, very clear about what they want kind of a call.
We recognize that we have folks living in this country who've been here 20 years, they've started a family, they pay their taxes, many of them are homeowners, but they don't have a say over the policies that affect their children and their families on any given day. The motion only...
They would if they became citizens. See, again, citizenship is not a magical, inherent thing that everyone should get. No, it is a privilege because it comes with certain things that are really nice and beneficial to you, certain privileges, and it also comes with certain responsibilities, things that you must demonstrate. Citizenship is not just something that you can just enjoy and everyone needs to bow down and kiss your feet. That's not at all. There's this really weird manipulation of the words of Christ in the New Testament when he says that you need to render unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's. And there's this goofy idea that's come in Western civilization in the last 100 years that means, that just means only pay taxes and nothing else. That's all that means. No, it's not. And Paul in the New Testament expounds on, as a Roman citizen, he had a series of responsibilities that were different than the legal resident of the Roman Empire. And as a citizen, individuals, regardless of faith or creed, if you are a citizen, that is a position of status. As a citizen, you are a member of the government, inherently. And it comes with a series of responsibilities. But on the left, they don't believe in the idea of citizenship being anything more than a point of natural give me tokens. That because they exist somewhere, that they deserve to be given food and shelter and all of the kinds of labors that are given by other people, regardless of earned status, regardless of what other individuals are forced to do, to simply benefit their entertainment, to simply benefit, etc. So this comes down to the kind of individuals that are going to pick up the banner, because someone's got to get out there and run for this kind of stuff. So who are they actually bringing out? Because again, in this particular election, you not only have the House of Representatives up for grabs, but the Senate. And that's where things get really spicy. We got to bring the radio crew back. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Now we get to the good stuff. So, on this beautiful Friday, Governor Janet Mills of Maine, she's dropped out of the Senate race because Graham Platner, he's got the momentum, he's got the stuff, and of course he has an extremely troubling past. And when I mean an extremely troubling past, now that he is the Democrats' man for the Senate, the Republican Party has an open lane to attack Graham Platner exclusively. No money has to be wasted on Janet Mills and all of the stuff that has been either hidden or kind of obfuscated. Of course, a lot of us already know this is the guy with the Nazi tattoo on his chest. He blamed it on just the Marines, which, as a lot of other Marines have pointed out, nope, not how that works. And then he got out there and we discovered some more creepy and disturbing stuff about this individual. So first and foremost, Graham Platner's former campaign manager, who refused to sign, by the way, just for the record here, she refused to sign a $15,000 non-disclosure agreement. So Graham Platner did not want these things released. And she said no, because she didn't want him to be the Democrat candidate for the state of Maine. Because this man is very open to a lot of attack up front. So she said, I've run out of self-restraint. This is according to Genevieve McDonald, the former campaign manager of Graham Platner. Says, I've run out of self-restraint, worse than when the guys on the train to Boston were fanboying over Reds Eats. The DC consultant class has effed up our U.S. Senate race again, and you all need to stop snipping at each other. This is seriously the dumbest timeline. Graham has an anti-Semitic tattoo on his chest. He's not an idiot. He's a military history buff. Maybe he didn't know it when he got it, but he got it years ago and should have covered it up because he knows damn well what it means. Now, believe it or not, this is probably the least of this man's problems. And as we are finding out more and more and more, and this is what political campaigns do, they find things, they may sit on them for a while, and then when the time is appropriate, they release them, and hey, we find out more about the guy's past. This dude has said and done some rather disturbing things. At the top of the list, at the very tip top of the list, blaming women for getting raped. That is quite a move. This man has had a very active social media history. There's a populist wing over on the socialist left that has some very, very wild views on social matters. The kind of stuff that genuinely does come out of the Middle East and Africa. I mean, if you've ever wondered why there is a kind of social link between the pro-Islamist crowd and the Marxist crowd, they meet in this very weird and bizarre, we know there's not enough food and security and safety for everyone, so might makes right. This is that kind of Stalinist mix with the Islamist left as well. So, first of all, as a reminder, here's Graham Platner announcing already, here's what he wants to do as soon as he gets to the Senate of the United States, just so that we know, before we get into his character, what this dude's goals are.
If we get the majority, then it's committee hearings time. And we need to spend the next 2 years shutting down the White House because we subpoena every single person in it every single day.
And again, you already know this. I already know this. That's the point. Now, one would think that because the Congress of the United States right now is doing nothing, and because, as I've reminded before, Senate Majority Leader John Thune is just not passing anything at all. At all. Maybe a reconciliation measure. It's doing nothing. There are a series of things that Americans want, they're not getting. So people aren't going to come out in excitement for Republicans to vote. They're not. I'm going to tell you that right now. What you are hoping for right now on the Republican side of the aisle is that what Trump is doing pays off. As I've said, we're going to find out at the end of Q2. But on the left, what you need right now are some inspirational candidates. So far, the only thing Democrats are running on is we're going to make life a living nightmare for the White House. That's what their big suggestion is. And then you have Bernie Sanders who go, we got to get the healthcare and the education, and if you just vote us into office, you can have all of these nice things. That's the proposal. That's it. Nothing else. There is nothing else. It is just grievance rhetoric. Now, here's the fun part. Because the youth base of the left doesn't care about the stuff that's on this guy's chest, the stuff that he said, they are solely in this because Graham Platner is openly a pro-May Day socialist. So today is the International Socialist Day. They're all out and celebrating it. We'll get to some of that later. There's no way we'll be able to play some of those clips on broadcast spectrum air because the FCC will have me for lunch if some of those words are uttered on broadcast air. The Democrats that are in other states are being forced to reckon with, wait a minute. You were in the Supreme Court nomination hearings going over Brett Kavanaugh's alleged high school yearbook. You guys are going over when Donald Trump met Epstein in like the 90s and then had nothing to do with him pretty soon after. So, like, why all of a sudden are you going, well, I mean, yeah, Graham Platner had a Nazi tattoo. Yeah, he said that, maybe women deserved it. Maybe they were asking for it. Yeah, sure, maybe he said a lot of really disgusting things. But, I mean, it was a while ago. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut.
What you saw is what you...
So, sorry, to clarify for the audio, this is a clip provided by Western Lensman. Here is the difference in Chris Murphy's attitude regarding language. Back in January 2025, talking about Elon Musk and the supposed Nazi salute, versus October of 2025 when he had to talk about Platner.
Saw is what you think you saw. Elon Musk did the Heil Hitler salute. He did. And what you were talking about is maybe the most dangerous moment in modern American political history, whereas there is a sense of endorsement from Elon Musk and a sense of entitlement and immunity given to people who are contemplating acts of violence against politicians, but specifically Democrats. And so all of our lives got put in jeopardy by what Elon Musk did on Monday night and what Donald Trump did the next day with those pardons.
Now we're going to flip it. How is he talking about Graham Platner a little bit later?
Sounds like a human being to me, a human being who made mistakes, recognizes them, and is very open about it. But yeah, certainly, I'm looking forward to sitting down and talking to him about it. He's obviously, right now performing very well in the polls in Maine.
Oh, that's all that matters. He's performing very well in the polls. Oh, well, then that's fine then. Oh, that's the success. That right there is the point. No, absolutely not. You need to look a little bit closer. We saw the same thing from Rahm Emanuel doing the same kind of thing where, sure, he may have had a Nazi tattoo on his chest. And again, very clearly an SS tattoo on his chest. Even he has admitted to it clearly. So if you're saying, maybe it was actually something different. Even he has admitted exactly what it was. His campaign manager has admitted exactly what it was. His former campaign manager, I should say. And then, of course, again, easily disqualifying the comments about women maybe deserving to get raped. But we'll let Rahm Emanuel, or actually we'll skip Rahm Emanuel because he doesn't matter. We'll go to Senator Chris Van Hollen, all right? Mr. Empathetic Man here. We'll see what he has to say.
The dude has not had a Nazi tattoo. I mean, let's be clear about what's going on here. I mean, how do you view that? I mean, it seems to be at least somewhat disqualifying in traditional.
Certainly historically.
So look, I mean, let's take a couple issues, including the comments he's made in the past. I mean, he's been very clear that he went into combat on behalf of the United States. He went through a really rough period. Yeah. PTSD type period.
Okay. Just to be clear, it is extremely insulting to veterans, to former law enforcement, to former contractors, to anyone who has been through some kind of trauma that leads to post-traumatic stress disorder, to suggest that if you go through this, you become a Nazi. That's stupid. That is a very dumb and insulting thing to suggest. You do not. And also, again, this fits in this idea that the only reason someone might be bad is if they're having a mental break. Stop this. Stop this. That is a very poor idea that has been debunked. Basically, the entire 20th century psychology tried to suggest that if people were just educated enough, if people were just pushed, kept away from any kind of mental illness enough, then therefore they would all be innately good people. That is not how that worked. Every single experiment that has tried this has failed. And anyone who believes this, he's learned. He was just going through a really tough time. I mean, come on. I mean, haven't you gone through a really tough time before? No, not how you do this. You don't need to settle. And that's not something you should be telling people either. And again, these statements from back when he was in the open primary. Now, this does bring us to a rather interesting moment, kind of a rare thing for me to say. I just came back this afternoon, from Washington, D.C. One of the things that I was there for was to appear on CNN's This Morning. And I had the opportunity, to, of course, to sit down with the host, Audie, to sit down with Mike Leon from the Can We Please Talk podcast, and then from the New York Times, their opinion columnist and interviewer also over at NPR, Lulu. And we got a chance to actually talk about what Democrats in the media and kind of abroad think about this guy. And a very weird thing for me to observe was the CNN legal analyst coming into the point of saying, are we all going to ignore that this man said it was okay for women to be sexually abused? If this was something on the right, the man said from CNN, we would be covering this 24 hours a day. Correct. Radio crew, we're going to send you over to the commercial. We're going to cover some of this clip over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, if you'll trouble me, here is this particular discussion. I think it, has a little bit of value.
So Platner's campaign platform, End Billionaire Welfare, right? It's a part of this anti-billionaire anti-billionaire movement, which Bernie Sanders and others are supporting, stopping mass deportations, creating an economic bill of rights.
So do you see how he's framed already here? So here we go from Audie. She's like, well, he's part of this anti-billionaire coalition. And, he's here for an economic bill of rights. And it's like all of these things that are just kind of like, okay, all right. That's how Audie's framing him. That's how she's setting him up here. So again, the skeletons in the closet. I mean, an actual skull if we're talking about the Nazi tattoo, but putting that aside, other skeletons in the closet.
And supporting unions. CNN's own
supporting unions. Good.
K-File reporter last October uncovered a lot of his social media posts where he once called himself a communist. He dismissed all police as bastards, said that rural white Americans actually are racist and stupid. There were some Reddit posts with some sort of misogynist commentary.
So you can hear me kind of going there. Again, just transparency. Reddit posts about misogyny.
The reason why I'm bringing this up is because when you listen to the Jon Stewart interview, one of the things Platner does is tell a sort of story of redemption. I was this guy on social media. I'm the kind of guy you actually want to flip and bring into the party. Here's what he said to Jon Stewart.
To see myself being framed by people who've never met me.
Framed.
Who know absolutely nothing about my background. Really, who just latched on to this oh, this guy said dumb things on the internet 15 years ago. And I'm like, yeah, man, I did. Cause I was like a angry young dude who got back from my 4th combat tour and was isolated and lonely and spent time bitching on the internet.
Okay. Little fun tip here, little something for you and the kids at home. When you are making this, this kind of a case here, I've done things in my past that I'm not proud of. Every single one of you has as well. We are inherently sinful creatures. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, Romans 3:23. So in that context, everyone being a fallible human being, see, the thing is, I don't have to wait until someone says, hey, Tony, you did this bad thing for me to change it. That man had to wait until people said, hey, wait a minute. That's a Nazi tattoo you got going on. And then he spent 2 weeks going, no, it's not. And then he spent a week of, okay, yeah, it is. And I didn't know it was. And then he had a week of, okay, I've always known it was, but the Marines did it. To, okay, I'm getting it covered up, but not because I'm embarrassed about it. The same with kind of the James Comey thing. Regardless of the crime or not, regardless of whether doing something in the past can be construed as something inherently heinous. The issue is when you lie about it, when you have to be convinced that that was a crappy thing to do. That's the issue here. That's one of the issues here, at least. And that'll, of course, bring us to some of these conversations about sexual assault, which we'll get into here in a couple of moments. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial because, I gotta jump in here, too. So it's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Don't go anywhere. Tons more.
If I could fall into the sky.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. So, Graham Platner, in all of his specialness, he made the decision through all of this here, again, to go through the entire Senate primary process. Now, Janet Mills has dropped out. He made the decision not to delete a number of things. He made the decision not to come out and say, hey, I used to believe this, just letting you know, I've changed in these ways. Essentially, he's playing an age-old political game of, I hope I don't get caught. Guys, Oppo research these days, opposition research, is incredibly detailed. And I'm something of a Oppo researcher myself. So when it comes to actually scouring some of this stuff, the internet is forever, and forever, amen. You are going to get caught doing stupid things if you do them online. And so, anywho, how the rest of the media is reacting to this is really bizarre, because what you're seeing right now from a lot of the Senate and the House Democrats, who are going to have to carry this dude's water through an election against moderate Susan Collins, which, by the way, she has not yet begun to campaign. All right, little John Paul Collins here. Again, I don't like the way that she votes in the Senate, but she does in fact have a pretty sizable base in a lot of the establishment class, the corporatist class in Maine. So Platner, he has to make it through unscathed. Not a very good outlook here. Again, here some of the media analysis here is truly where things get a little bit interesting, because he gets out and he says, well, hey, I've changed. I had these posts on the internet that were a little weird, but that's not who I am. And I'm skipping ahead out of this interview because he drops a word or two that producer Allison on WIBC would be unhappy if I allowed to play on the radio side of the air.
Isolated and lonely and spent time bitching.
There you go. That's what I was trying to avoid. Sorry, Allison.
Isolated and...
Can we scoot ahead of it, please? There we go.
Yeah. Sure, I'll take that. I think that's a compelling argument. Listen, I think we're in a moment where there's a lot of insurgent energy, especially on the left.
Insurgent or anti-incumbent?
So I think actually insurgent.
Okay. So the New York Times columnist and podcaster, Lulu here, she makes the case that I do absolutely. Lulu Garcia Navarro says, I buy it. He's redeemed. This is all about insurgency against kind of the older people in Congress. It's an interesting move to make, trying to claim the populist energy from the right, while also bringing in kind of the AOCs, the Jasmine Crockett's, the Ilhan Omar's, and shivving the hand that fed you. I used to include Eric Swalwell in that list, but, well, not anymore.
I think it's not just anti-incumbent. I think people want real change. There has been if you think about Trump's election, that was the beginning of the insurgency, all right? And I think this is now coming for the left, and I don't think it's progressive, and I don't think it has a name that is very easily identifiable. It is literally just, this isn't working for us. Throw the bums out. We want someone from the outside.
I think the Maine race, that race, is a perfect test case for that. Yeah. Under the old world, let's say 2006, the Senate race there, Janet Mills would have been the perfect candidate. That is exactly who Democrats would have targeted, the sort of mainstream person. And she might have won in a year like that. Around the country, you're seeing that kind of populist uprising on the right and left. Exactly. And I think this is an interesting, and how powerful that is will be an interesting
Lulu, like you.
So what you have here is kind of a sterilizing. To be fair, it's kind of a well, I mean, really the attitude is it's just really like a lot of aggravation kind of with the older folk. This is what it's going to be framed as. Just so that you know, so you're aware, over the next couple of months, while we're dealing with redistricting stuff, the sentiment that is going to be told to everyone is that what we're really tired of in the United States is like this old establishment class. This has been tried by Republicans in previous midterms. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I'm telling you, I've said it before. I'm happy to say it again. Scoreboard. Just saying, I'm hip with the youths and you know me from some other business. And sure, it doesn't matter that in my personal life, I've, gotten a couple abortions and, I did all this other stuff that isn't really good. And maybe I'm kind of a wackadoodle, but you should just elect me anyway and it'll be fine. And then the other party ran kind of more moderate voiced, normalish people, at least on the surface. And it didn't work for Republicans. Otherwise, we'd have Senator Herschel Walker right now. All right, this idea of, well, I'm new and different. This is what the Democrats are going to run. It's very bizarre. Here's kind of the linchpin. Democrats are currently in the process of running the 2022 Republican congressional strategy. There you go. The Democrats are running the 2022-2020 Republican congressional strategy. The problem is that it doesn't work. It isn't working. Because Americans don't want this crap. They want results. They want Congress to say, here's what we're going to do. Here are the issues that we know you're facing. We know that you're aggravated about energy prices. We know you're aggravated about transportation costs. We know you're aggravated about grocery prices. We know you're aggravated about crime. We know you're aggravated about X, Y, and Z down the list. And instead of actually addressing those things and saying, here's what we're going to do to solve them, we do this silly, awkward, well, actually, everyone's just mad at everyone over the age of blah, blah, blah. And then on the other side, it's, well, everyone's just really annoyed with the youths. That's not going to get people to the polls. And here's the catch. You who are watching the show right now, you know this. I'm not breaking any fancy ground here explaining this to you, but I want you to see the explanation happening in real time so that 2 months from now, when you hear some local affiliate station, Channel 6 or Channel 13 or, ABC 7 or whatever, and they start telling you everyone seems to be really frustrated with the current establishment of whatever. No.
I've been wondering since the 2024 Senate cycle, when there were a bunch of Republican candidates with some really unsavory backgrounds in the Senate.
See?
And there was a big conversation about what was called candidate quality. So you saw Herschel Walker, Sean Parnell, Josh Mandel. These are people that they failed, right, when he got to the primary. And this is the argument, and when you got to the general. And I think this is the argument from a lot of Schumer-style Democrats. They say, look over there. Right. Just because someone appeals, just because someone has this shaggy background that you can explain away, it doesn't mean they're going to survive the general election. In the era of Trump, is that true? Or is the pre-Trump concept of candidate quality dead and gone?
Okay, so before you hear me answer here, to give you the kind of TLDR, because we'll have to send the radio crew off to the wide, wonderful beyond for the weekend. There are two things here that I would wrap up for those on the radio syndication audience. Number one, blaming things on Trump isn't going to work. Number two, riding Trump's coattails itself is also not going to work. So Republicans in Congress who are kind of crossing their fingers and hoping and wishing upon a star that magically everything is going to work out, that ain't how it works. It ain't how it works. So the Democrats are going to preach that we've all died, and what we need is like a populist replacement on the left side of the aisle. That's not going to work because we've been fed that line before. On the right, Republicans are going to say, let him cook. But one of the chefs that needs to be in the room is Congress. And so that's not going to work either. I'm telling you, what you will see is the lowest propensity election at this rate. Radio crew will catch you later. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, I hear you. You say, Tony, you're telling me that, there's not a lot of energy and excitement about things. There's not a lot of oomph. That doesn't really sound like a fun end of Friday. We'll get there because there is genuinely a silver lining that is really more of a solid Trump gold lining right on the end of it. We'll get there.
Well, I think it's a candidate quality of who appeals towards the actual policy proposals of the base. So the youth on the left is expressly more socialist. That's not my label. That's their label.
Yeah, anti-billionaire, all that kind of stuff.
So again, May Day, look at the protests that are scheduled for today. Of course, Platner's endorsement of those kind of events already coming into play here. He proposes these kind of policies that they look for as anti-incumbent, but also insurgent socially as being more outspoken and flamboyant in those critiques like you've seen from a lot of populist right-wing candidates. You wouldn't compare Senator Josh Hawley on more of the populist side to the more establishment Republican Mitch McConnell. Very different comm styles, very different campaign styles. I think it's a little interesting that grace is selectively given. Obviously, over on the right side of the aisle, I would be more readily happy to criticize his past in certain areas because that's what we do. And on the left, I notice a lot of, it was 15 years ago, come on. But the comments were saying sometimes those who are raped deserve it.
Can I just say in the era of Nick Fuentes, can we not? Maybe.
So Audie suggests, the era of Nick Fuentes, I'm not sure the point she was making here because, again, I was part of the organization that kicked Nick Fuentes out of Lone Conservative 10 years ago. I mean, almost to the day, 10 years ago. But past that.
I was part of the organization that kicked him out 10 years ago.
That's fine, but I'm just saying there's very clearly a modern widening of the window of the political discourse that neither party has adequate.
So here's where I'm, honestly, just to give you a transparent moment, I'm thinking I'm going to have to kind of fight this one out a little bit, which for a morning show is kind of not the thing you normally do. And instead, from the top rope, what I'm not expecting is the legal analyst here from CNN to bring in what I think is probably the best point, one far better than mine.
Explained away that I don't understand.
Sure, but you're talking about sexual assault here, and I just think Democrats would be screaming bloody murder.
Talking about sexual assault, he has not, because right now there's a lawmaker who is facing sexual assault claims who's not been kicked out of Congress.
Understood, correct. But Democrats would be screaming bloody murder if a Republican candidate
said sometimes she deserves it.
Yeah, under their old rubric.
Like 15 years ago, I was a younger guy.
Well, since woke is over, I'm not sure.
Schumer.
Okay, so what you heard there is essentially saying, look, we would be absolutely all over this, but we're not. So this gives Republicans the opportunity to do one thing and one thing only. There are going to be fewer people that come forward to vote for this man. There are. There are going to be fewer people in the general that come forward to vote for this man because all you're getting are excuses for bad behavior with, come on. That's not going to be a way to get people to the ballot box. So if that's what we have, seriously, if that's what we actually have to kind of address some brass tacks here. What do we actually see Republicans providing and Democrats providing? This is the question. This is what it all boils down to. This is what I've been trying to build to over the hour of the show. And I apologize. I haven't been trying to kind of meander or hem and haw. Sometimes you look for points to be made, and they're made a little bit earlier than you thought they might be. It's just what happens when I don't have the entire show scripted out. I try to do this stuff organically. That brings us to what each party provides. So first and foremost, what are the Democrats providing as the antidote to the entire Trump administration? Because so far, you've seen Trump get out there and sign executive orders, just bippity-boppity. I mean, just all the time. In fact, the Democrats released 1 month later a really scathing critique about how much they hate Trump's executive order on mail-in voting. And you've seen executive orders from the Trump administration all over everywhere. You've seen judicial freezes and injunctions and stays and bop it, twist it, shake it, all that kind of stuff. You have not seen what I think a lot of Republicans were hoping for, which is that Trump was going to executive order the economy into Mach 6. We haven't seen it. We haven't. The tariffs did not produce the magical fantasy land of kumbaya that a lot of Americans were promised. Now, here's the fun part. A lot of Americans were also promised ultimate gloom and doom on the tariffs. That didn't happen either. And then on the flip side, you also saw the Trump administration begin the 60-day window that included Operation Epic Fury and then the current naval blockade of Iran, which also we're going to get to. But so far, Americans are wholly undecided, which means they're not going to come out and vote because the midterms are not about the president. They're not. Now, previously they have been because a rebuke of the president meant that the president couldn't get the Congress to make the American people happy enough, so you had a different part of Congress, the other side, who would say, we could do this so much better if you would just put us into office. And so people then voted other members of Congress in as a rebuke to shift the direction of the country. That's not how things work anymore. In the last couple of election cycles in the midterms, both sides have promised huge red wave, huge blue wave, and instead you've gotten kind of middle and very little at all. Very, very little at all. So what does that mean? It means that Republicans haven't produced from the congressional side anything that's inspiring. And that's not even the fault of the House of Representatives, because the House has. Speaker Johnson and the Republican caucuses have been pushing out legislation left, right, and center constantly all day long. The Senate has done nothing. Well, you've already heard me talk about that. So we're kind of counting on just like all of the Trump stuff to pay off, which, by the way, could it? Absolutely. I'm still waiting until the end of quarter two. So what does this mean the Democrats are providing? What's their suggestion? I'm not even joking. All of the Democrats on the older corporate side are whining about Trump and the voter right amendment stuff, or the Voting Rights Act stuff, the racial gerrymandering, or they are trying to make excuses for Graham Platner saying that maybe she deserved it kind of stuff. Okay, what are the younger ones doing? Because the younger ones are out there doing a lot of the legwork of the campaign. They're making the appeal. It's the youths who make the appeal on the emotional side. The elders in the party make the appeal based on past experience, context, and the results. So the populist side of the left, what are they doing? They're just openly admitting to America they don't care if everything crashes and it all burns down. As long as it's done in the name of equity and sunshine and rainbows, then that's fine. Enter Seattle socialist mayor Katie Wilson. Now, you have to be in a really, really deep hole to be criticized by the Washington freaking Post on the left side of the aisle. But this is the clip that's burned it. Here is Seattle's mayor Katie Wilson asking not only if billionaires are leaving Washington state, what about millionaires leaving the state? You're just going to tax everyone to hell and gone. What about 100,000-aires leaving the state? What are you going to say to people who are just making some money? Here's a response.
I think the claims that millionaires are going to leave our state are like super overblown.
So far, just as a reminder, you've seen this from California to New York. Millionaires are leaving. They are leaving because they're getting taxed out the wazoo. The wazoo has become incredibly large. So much so that Governor Kathy Hochul is begging on hand and hoof, oh, please come back, millionaires. Please tell your donor friends to come back. The Seattle mayor thinks that's not going to happen, but if it does...
And if, the ones that leave, like, bye.
Did you hear the tenor? Did you hear the timbre of the crowd that clapped for her? They're all young cheers and hoots and hollers. Goodbye, industry. Goodbye, anyone and everyone. Doesn't matter. See ya. Doesn't matter. We're all going to be fine without you. Not recognizing where the money is coming from. So, from, again, Dominic Pino from the Washington Post. Just bizarre to be reading this to you. Quote, the 43-year-old Wilson, who received a $10,000 allowance from her parents last year, is defiant about the consequences of her antagonism towards successful people who create value for society. You're not going to be able to get people out to election if it's just get out the guillotines. It's not going to work. It's not going to function this way. It may be enough for a mayoral election, but these are Senate seats that we're talking about in Maine, in Michigan. These are key races. And if all you're really concerned about is whether your candidate likes, oh no, they're like Israel, let's get rid of them, that kind of thing that's going on in Michigan, or oh man, he's too capitalist, we got to get rid of her, she's too capitalist up in Maine. Yeah, that ain't going to go very well. And by the way, at the first slight stiff pushback from a reporter, like for example from KOMO reporter Chris Daniels, asking Mayor Katie Wilson of Seattle if she had changed her views on banning security cameras around the city, which is what all of the socialists and communists in Seattle are demanding. Oh, security cameras negatively impact black people, is the argument they're making. After there was a shooting near an event she was at, and they couldn't find anything about the person, like, because the camera stuff was like the only lead. She then ran away from the interview. This is shared with us over from some of our friends over at the post-millennial side of things. Here you go.
I wouldn't be an excellent reporter if I didn't ask you. It's been an eventful week, and I think people are concerned about you. How do you feel after Tuesday, after what happened, what transpired?
I'm doing great. Got a great team supporting me, and I'll just say, we don't have any indication that that shooting was targeted or anything like that. So I think it's a reminder of how much work we have to do as a city on gun violence, but I'm doing fine.
And the last question would be related to that I talked to people in that neighborhood who said that, hold on, it's just one last question. People in that community who are concerned that there's been rising gun violence and that there should be more surveillance cameras and that kind of thing. That's obviously been an issue that you weighed in on. Does that change it? Does that change your perspective at all?
Well, let's keep it on. Yeah, let's keep it on the top of this event. Thanks.
But does that change your perspective at all on the issue of surveillance cameras based on what you went through on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Oh, staff friends. Oh no, sorry, we got to go.
She's about to answer the question, though.
Sorry. Bye.
Okay.
Beautiful. So paper thin. That's what they got. And by the way, this is something that's been seen quite a bit in kind of like the populist movements in both parties. When the candidate actually gets up to answering questions, if there is no understanding of how things work, they look incredibly stupid. And it's embarrassing. It is truly embarrassing for people to watch their selected candidate who may have won the primary. They're out there, they're ready to go. They're kind of seen as the young, fresh face of the party. They have no idea what's going on at all. That is truly humiliating. Now, let's get to some of the other news and stuff because there's a couple of other things that have gone on today. We probably won't have enough time to get into the May stuff, but I do want to get over to this whole 60-day termination before the War Powers Act needed to kick in. The President of the United States did, in fact, tell Congress that the war has been, quote, terminated. So we're going to talk a little bit about, what this means. There's a couple of things that I believe are being a bit glossed over. So first, the letter of the President of the United States sent this over to Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, as well as the President pro tempore of the Senate. Now, there's really nothing super special on this letter. I'm just throwing it up, because we have it for B-roll. Essentially, the President of the United States said, hey, look, so we carried out the operation in a series of strikes, which is, again, the President's right under the War Powers Resolution. And then, after deciding the President had reached a certain series of goals, then kicked it into a naval blockade. That's what he's reported. Now, there was a really kind of bizarre exchange between Tim Kaine of Virginia and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, in which Hegseth kind of argued NFL rules, saying, well, I think the clock stopped as soon as we went into the ceasefire and then just went into the blockading. And then Tim Kaine was like, well, I'm not aware that that would pass the statute. To be perfectly clear, right now, what the United States is involved in the Middle East are not considered offensive actions. And you do not have to take my word for it. Remember, when the tariff decision came down, that would be after we went through this entire situation regarding the President of the United States and Peter Navarro and of course, the Solicitor General arguing the President of the United States could simply declare there's a national emergency and then tariff certain things from other countries around the world. When Brett Kavanaugh and Samuel Alito were issuing their statements, their opinions, they made the point that the President of the United States doesn't have the constitutional authority without Congress to just impose tariffs whenever, but he does have the authority under the Constitution to embargo any nation he so well chooses. And so now this is what you see occurring in the Middle East with the US Navy. Now, you can not like this. You can say this has to do with war. It's not. By definition, it is not. The United States has given the president the authority to embargo any country he wants, period. If Congress doesn't like it, Congress has to pass a law to intervene. Now, this doesn't have to do with strikes. This doesn't have to do with a series of airstrikes. Republicans in the House and the Senate right now appear to be kind of abstaining from getting involved because there isn't an active strike package that's going on. Now, you're more than welcome to disagree with me on this. And it does seem kind of open-ended in a lot of ways. But right now, that's the Supreme Court language that was provided in the decision. The president can send the Navy to embargo anybody at any time. That is his right as the president of the United States, duly elected as commander-in-chief. So there are a lot of people that don't quite seem to get this right now, and it's really, really bizarre to watch. Again, I on CNN today, I had the opportunity to hear this, well, Republicans are kind of running away from this. Folks, very, very basic language written here, and the Trump administration's language does match it. In case you think it's just me saying that, no, here you go.
I don't think we have any active kinetic military bombing, firing, anything like that right now. We're trying to broker a peace, and I would be very reluctant to get in front of the administration in the midst of these very sensitive negotiations. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Catching him walking is a bit of a metaphor because they've gone home.
No.
So they're not around to have this conversation further.
So then you hear yours truly, and I'm going to skip past me explaining that the Supreme Court's already ruled on this. The president can embargo whoever he chooses. Again, there are very specific conversations that we need to have as a nation about how tariffs work in the law, because since Congress has C-SPAN covering every conversation that it has 24/7 live, and every other country can see exactly the negotiations that are being made, we really can't issue tariffs as a negotiation lever with other countries because the cards are for all to see. That's an issue. This is when the law was enacted. I mean, the letter would have to travel to whatever country that we were tariffing in order for that country to then respond, which would then take weeks and months. You didn't actually have 24/7 coverage. So that does need to change. But the way the law stands currently, as the current Supreme Court interpretation suggests, the president absolutely has the right. This doesn't qualify under the War Powers Act stuff right now. Again, we don't see F-35s and F-22s running strike packages, B-1 Lancers running strike packages over. We see the embargo. Now, here's where things get fun. The question right now is if the United States blockade via the Navy is attacked, are we actually going to see a series of retaliatory strikes, and what would those look like? Because is a federal judge going to issue some kind of a stay or injunction here? Federal judges don't have any plenary power over the president in this manner. So after I get done making this point
about it, the entire time,
Hormuz Strait blockade by the U.S. Navy, preventing certain powers from trading up the Persian Gulf with Iran.
Tony's right, because if you think about it, the entire time, the language and the way they've messaged about this, first it was military operations, and then Trump was like, no, actually, I committed a war. And then it just kept changing. So he's right. They're very, with respect to the language that they're using around this, they're very careful in it. And if you saw in that exchange that happened yesterday with Hegseth and Senator Tim Kaine about the clock stopping on with respect to the ceasefire, it's almost like playing a game of tag, and then you this is base right here. No, hold on, that's not base. And then we have to argue about base.
Which is a fair point. The administration's language on this has been rather fluid. The converse to that, the contrast, would be that this is a very convoluted series of laws. It is. When you upgrade the law, right? So when the federal government rules on precedent, how things are to be interpreted, that being through the Supreme Court or through the appellate court, or when we're looking over at how Congress updates small bits of the law at a time to accompany new technology, etc., the entire law doesn't upgrade. By the way, this is something that a lot of those who want to run for office, this is the conversation that we end up having. I really want to run for my state legislature. Okay, have you read your state's constitution? That's where you need to start. Number two, you need to read some of the precedent in your own state to see how the law has changed over time. Every single state and commonwealth's laws are so convoluted because you have a massive bowl of spaghetti. Since your state or commonwealth was founded, it has evolved and changed, and new laws have been enacted and reacted. You do, in fact, need a lot of this to be sorted through. And the administration trying to do this is fighting another group of people who have 14 different interpretations of what's allowed and what isn't. Now, some things are very cut and dried. This really isn't one of them, which is why, personally, I would argue the Supreme Court, being Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Samuel Alito, knew exactly what they were doing when they illustrated what things the president could do, not just saying the president can't do this. Instead of just kind of cutting and running and saying, well, sometimes, which is what we see from a lot of the federal judiciary, in a lot of the district courts, that is. What you are seeing right now is the Supreme Court of the United States issuing a lot more definitive and kind of outlining what the Constitution states the president can and can't do under the current statutes. And that's going to be necessary because if we don't have clear lines of what's allowed and what isn't allowed, then you exist in this moral gray area that does two things. Number one, it detaches common Americans from wanting to engage with it. If it's too difficult, if it's too convoluted, then Americans go, nope, I'm good. See ya. I ain't doing it. Which is one of the reasons why that a lot of Americans don't take advantage of certain tax code benefits for them. It's too convoluted. It's too much of a mess. It's so much easier to slap the TurboTax button and then have it do it for you, even if you don't get as much back. The second thing it's going to do is it is going to create decades of headaches because the American government is not operating at the efficiency that it should, which means that you get decades and decades and decades of the bloated waste, fraud, and abuse. So I'm going to skip over the New York Times columnist kind of rebuttal there and get into some of the last year. Because what is the president doing? What is he doing at the moment in the Middle East? So the Wall Street Journal points out, quote, the U.S. Navy's blockade is revealing a hole in Tehran's strategy of guerrilla warfare and controlling the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian regime is in full collapse. We are witnessing it right now. It is happening. Now you say, well, why aren't we seeing it broadcast on media? Well, they are still keeping the internet shut down. What we do see, the things that are being leaked out of the country, is that the IRGC is turning on themselves inside the regime. There's no money. There's nothing there to keep people doing the oppression style stuff. So Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said this today right before noon, quote, it is very difficult for rats in a sewer pipe to know what's going on in the outside world. Some color for the Iranian leadership as they literally sit in the dark, meaning some people are saying, oh, it's rosy and wonderful. What happened? I thought this was going to be a success. I mean, clearly Iran's just as great as it was right before this. Do not be ignorant and loud at the same time. You see this quite often when there's like a plot hole in a movie and someone who really wants to like the movie will try to explain why the movie actually, what you don't see behind the scenes is actually it made a lot of sense for The Last Jedi to suck. And oh, that's really good. You just don't know what you're talking about. No, don't do that. That's the point Bessent is making here. You don't have to make up imaginary reasons. Well, actually, Iran's got a whole unicorn cavalry battalion. You just haven't seen them yet. Number one, the United States has complete control of the Strait of Hormuz. True. There is a hard currency shortage. So Iran does not have in supply, I mean, forget the rial, which is more worthless than the Weimar paper currency. There is not a substantial amount of US dollars. The pallets have been emptied since the Obama era, and they don't even have a substantial couple of 5-gallon buckets of the Chinese yuan. There's nothing. It's gone, Dave. There's nothing left in the chamber. Number 3, food and gasoline rationing are in place. The entire international community turning against it, either through their will or not, meaning there's nothing getting in or out. And the blockade will continue. Period. Because the President of the United States can do so indefinitely. And he has absolutely that right to do so. As Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent pointed out, Operation Economic Fury may end up being the more core downfall of individuals who may have been able to weather the storm and say, well, sure, we don't really have a lot of money or any money at all, but hey, we're all still here. They haven't touched us. We still haven't seen Muqtada Khomeini. We haven't seen the gay one-legged son of Ayatollah al-Khomeini, who is gone. Again, President Pezeshkian, a lot of his statements, the head of the Iranian parliament, whether we're looking at Ghalibaf, a lot of his statements have been rescinded and changed. Foreign ministers are getting swapped out. Russia was supposed to come to their aid. They didn't. China was supposed to come to their aid through these Pakistani magical land routes of excitement. Hasn't manifested into anything at all. So what does this mean Trump's doing at home? Because I'm sure, I haven't looked over at the comment section in just a bit here, but I'm sure some of you are saying, who cares? I'm worried about things over here at home. What are we doing? Gas prices, they're very, very expensive. What's going on? Hey, I hear you. Here's what is and isn't being done right here and right now. So, from the Dallas Express, the president approved today a cross-border pipeline permit between the United States and Canada border. This would be a presidential permit authorizing the Bridger Pipeline Expansion LLC to construct and operate a 36-inch diameter oil pipeline at the U.S.-Canada border in Phillips County, Montana. The 647-mile project is designed to transport up to 550,000 barrels of crude per day from the Keystone XL segment in Alberta, Canada, through Montana and Wyoming. This is also done through Scott Zeldin essentially fairy poofing away a lot of the garbage EPA regulations that are retarded. That's a good thing. That's halfway there. When I mean halfway there, I mean expanding oil production is a great start. There are a couple of things that are necessary here, though. So again, the United Arab Emirates leaving OPEC is going to drastically lower a lot of these gas prices down over the long term. So what needs to happen? Iran at a point in the near future. And I'm not going to, again, I've never made any kind of a prediction on this, specifically because I don't believe I have enough data here to give you a positional timeline. At some point, when the Iranian regime collapses, Kharg Island is still open. And so whatever becomes the next stage of that government is going to lower those prices. November is still a very long way off. It has been 2 months. It has been 2 months. I'm seeing a lot of people pretend that it is November 2nd. It ain't. And there are a lot of people that are making really kind of bizarre statements right now that they then have to delete 2 days later because it doesn't work like that. So, again, what the president is doing so far, fine. Now, are there things that can be done on the congressional level? Absolutely. Congress could be doing a whole list of things to fix a lot of these issues, but they're not. And this is truly laid at the feet of Senate Majority Leader John Thune because he is scared of the filibuster. That's it. I wish I could tell you that it was a whole multiplicity of factors. It's not. The president has imposed a series of sanctions. Additionally, over on Cuba, John Solomon over at Just the News reports that the latest sanctions include persons with links to the energy sector who evaded Cuba, as well as those who have, quote, materially assisted, sponsored, or provided financial, material, or technological support for, or goods or services to, or in support of the government of Cuba, or any person whose property or interests in property are blocked pursuant to this order. This means individuals who were running those little socialist flotillas, those solar panels that were definitely going to hospitals that just magically didn't go to any hospitals, incredible, that went to the regime. No, not going to be a thing anymore. Now, the president is messing around with some tariffs again. He did a retaliatory tariff today on the European Union regarding auto imports. We'll have to see how that plays out. not necessarily the best of ideas right in the middle of the S&P and the NASDAQ being kind of a core part of economic growth, to kind of mess with that amid some other things. We'll have to see how it plays out. I'm eager to hear what Scott Bessent has to kind of pull for here. There are a lot of Republicans who are hoping that, oh, well, maybe in May, hey, we'll just have just presto. We'll have a new Federal Board Reserve chairman and everything will magically be okay. No, that is a part. It is not the whole. Again, I'm really looking forward to the replacement of Jerome Powell for professional and personal reasons. But in this instance, the idea that there's just one magical thing at the executive level that needs to be done here, I'm kind of skeptical at this point that's going to be enough. Now, the bright side for Republicans is that Democrats have squandered every single opportunity for political momentum, including this one, because they can't help themselves. And that's going to be kind of a rough thing to kind of wrap around. Is some of the redistricting stuff, is that going to be enough in November? It's probably going to be a very, very narrow lead. Do I think that Republicans are going to keep the Senate? Probably. I also think that we're probably, this would just be the purest of speculation. I think we're probably going to get around September or October, and finally that filibuster is going to pop. I just don't think it's going to be I think that it's going to look so rough for Republicans after maybe the Q2 doesn't surge forward, because if Congress doesn't pass some laws and actually change some things, the executive orders can't act like the panacea. Not going to do it. I don't see that. The evidence hasn't borne that out already, or we would have seen some of those things kick in already. And I can't lie to you. I can't. Now, the funny thing is, there are Democrats that are trying to gloat over this. And this is true. This is the really funny part. So there's kind of a sit in the corner moment for both parties that's really funny. There's some Democrats trying to say, well, there's no silver lining for Republicans. They're really dumb. Best of luck to you. Best of luck to you with that one right now. Again, so far, there are a lot of Republicans in Congress that are pitching ideas. It is being held up by one guy in the Senate. If that one guy in the Senate caves, a bunch of things proposed by Republicans that are, by polling data, very popular with Americans are going to shoot forward. So far, there has not yet been a single proposal by a Democrat in the House or the Senate, from the Fettermans to the Schumers, from the Hironos to the Bookers, from the Hakeem Jeffries to the AOCs. Not a single proposal that is something Americans by the polling data support. Not one. So if nobody's supporting anything, what does that mean? It means that no one's coming to vote in the midterms. No one. Nobody. So it's going to be who caves first. Well, we are going to have to see how that turns out. So I will take a couple of mail time questions here at the end, just for fun and fancy free good times. Lee Zeldin, not, who did I say? I said Scott. Did I say Scott Zeldin? That'd be silly. Lee Zeldin, the EPA, ditching a lot of those. If I said Sean Duffy, that's even worse. Sorry, I got a note from Daniel, but yeah, Lee Zeldin for the EPA, who, by the way, would have made a stellar attorney general, but Todd Blanche is doing a pretty stellar job, I'd say. I'll take a couple of questions here, right here at the end. First and foremost, a very kind $2 super chat from Captain Danny Barrow says, who's going to bail New York City out? No one. No one's bailing New York City out. Just for the record, there are aspects of the stock market and Wall Street that are moving elsewhere. What is it, producer Daniel? Is it Dallas? Dallas is one of the emerging stock markets in the country. That's where things will go. The whole, people will suddenly get sick of left-wing stuff and they'll flip and they'll vote for a Republican. Hey, how's Detroit going? I've heard this before. By the way, this is one of my reasons that I don't care for people in, for example, my own state who don't like the fact that the Republican supermajority here isn't always the most active. And they'll throw a fit and go, well, fine, I'll just vote for a Democrat. That'll show them. That is what happened in Michigan. And then it never went red ever again. That's what happened in California, and then it never went red ever again. Don't be dumb. Don't be dumb. I'm just not going to vote for him. That'll show him. I'll shoot myself in the foot. That'll show him. No. Not how that works. And is anyone going to bail out New York City? No. Maybe the next Democrat administration? Possibly. But I doubt it. Again, it really depends. Mamdani is finding himself smacking into a lot of walls. There is a breaking point for every populist who comes into office and finds out that they can't just magically fart rainbows. So Mamdani is a populist. He's a socialist populist. He governs by emotion. Everything should be free. There are a lot of populists over on the right who thought, hey, you know, I'll just go in and day one, we'll just gut everything at the school board level. And I'm like, that's not how that works. Oh, sure it is. And then they got in, and then, shocker, that wasn't how it works. I gave a speech exactly a week ago today, in which I talked about the different factions of the Republican Party needing each other, and they do need each other, because you do need the technocrats, the establishment who know how things work, and you need the energy and the enthusiasm and the around normal peopleness of the populace. They do need each other. And then also the traditional conservatives who have a moral compass need libertarians to remind them that when you give away rights, they don't come back. And libertarians need traditional conservatives because libertarians live in this fantasy land where you can just snap things away. That's also not how things work either, and they need traditional conservatives to ground them. The Republican factions do need each other. So that's another topic for another time. From Dorian Billing, did Kathy Hochul utter the D word today, deport? Maybe. I didn't actually see that. There's so much Mayday nonsense going on and then getting home from DC that I didn't actually catch that clip. I try not to report on things I haven't seen personally just yet. Is there anything they can do? This is from Bill. Is there anything they can do to replace Thune? The problem with replacing the Senate Majority Leader, the devil you know is often more safe than the devil you don't. So you may remember that the last time we had a Senate Majority Leader election, who was one of the guys that was up for the choice? Senator John Cornyn, who has a lot of the same problems that we see with Thune. So again, the greatest blessing from God that we've had over the last couple of years is that after Kevin McCarthy, I know you guys won't find this super popular. I had a lot of issues with him, but he was not anywhere near as bad as people made him out to be. Although he's getting Speaker Mike Johnson. Speaker Mike Johnson has done a better job as Speaker than anyone had any reason to expect. And I'm not just saying that because he's my brand of indie fundy Baptist. The man has done a lot with a little. I don't think we've ever seen a Speaker of the House govern with such a very tiny majority before. It's genuinely impressive. But I've been surprised by a lot of things. I've been surprised by a lot regarding Speaker Johnson. And also for a lot of Republicans in the House who I were expecting to be really disappointing and ended up being not disappointing. And then also the flip as well. So that side said, as for Thune, and then also term limits. So like, can term limits fix this? Term limits always sound really, really great in theory. The problem is that there are a lot of Republicans who are old who are actually kind of useful to keep around longer than one term. We have Brandon Gill in the House right now. Brandon Gill's awesome. As long as Brandon Gill continues to be awesome, the people of Texas should be able to elect him however many times they darn well please. You have a right to vote for who you want. Artificial and extra nonsensical stuff other than like you need to live there, I'm not sold on it. I hear the arguments. I hear you. I do. I could probably be convinced. As far as Thune, could he be primaried? I mean, the Dakotas are weird, man. I mean, you've got some majorly wealthy people out there and just not a lot of people out there. There's a lot of business interests out there, which are not a bad thing inherently, that do put a lot of weight in his favor. I'd have to look at his constituency record. Again, the Senate was supposed to be something elected by the state. It's not supposed to be your state's popularity contest. The 17th Amendment is dumb. It was a mistake. Anyway, wasn't Planter going uncontested now? Yeah. Oh, Janet Mills dropped out. But we're covering what he's doing because now all of the Democrats have to defend him because he's going up against Susan Collins. And Susan Collins, the one good thing about Susan Collins, although it hurts me to say this, because she's so moderate and milquetoast and mediocre, when you have Platner, who's just awful and radical and nonsensical, it makes it a lot easier to run. I mean, again, this is the Senate 22 election kind of over and over. Thank you very, very much to Strictly Logical for giving $2.79 in Canadian dollars. Appreciate that, eh? So on to the next question side of things. Oh, this is a good question. This is from Steve in the Discord. Both parties have growing disillusioned fringes. Conservatives have the Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes types, and liberals have the Mamdani and Piker crowd. Which one do you think is more likely to split off as a third party? Neither. The answer is neither, because they're both populists. They are. They're both populists. The answer, so here again, populist as a political policy is dangerous because it's all based on what I'm feeling in emotions. It's not actually based on, again, with the instant gratification culture of the United States, what is popular, i.e., the will of the people, that kind of a thing, you get into some really weird majority democracy style stuff where if people just get angry enough, they'll just change it right then and there without kind of looking at some of the things that are keeping things in place as guardrails. So the funny thing is with the left, the populist movement that is essentially saying, screw it, we'll just tear everything down, is based in Marxian goals. On the right, with Tucker, it's based in Marxian goals. I mean, he'll openly tell you now that he thinks socialism is fine. And then Nick Fuentes has no morals whatsoever. He's just retarded. So, I mean, there are two sides of the same coin. They just have different frameworks of reference. The weird bizarro religion for the leftist Marxists is stoicism in the economics and hedonism in the LGBTQ plus 2IA whatever. And then there's a section that's very religiously adherent to Islam. So that's that crew. And then on the right, you have a faux kind of fake religious adherence. It's cultural Christianity, but it's not the Protestant brand. It's the Catholic fake Christianity kind, not real Catholicism. Essentially, you have someone who totally converts and then completely goes against a bunch of teachings of the Catholic Church. And that's really where a lot of that is. And then also the same kind of Islamic adherence and praise and stuff. It's where you get the Andrew Tates as well that are just idiots. They have no idea about how anything works and they're just stupid. I mean, again, Tucker Carlson going to Moscow and laughing about grocery stores, essentially laughing about things that Aldi's has done far better than any grocery store in Moscow for 35 years is just peak. I mean, there you go. And they both have their proxies. They both have everything they blame everything on. So the left populists blame everything on billionaires and Israel. And then you have the right populists who now blame everything on, billionaires and Israel. So are they really going to split off? A lot of them are parlor pinks. So, a red, somebody who's willing to actually go die Marxism, communism, the revolutionary. A parlor pink, term coined in the 20th century for somebody who's, they're kind of red, just hanging around, but they're not willing to really go out and do anything about it. You see a lot of that there. And they become irrelevant. They do. And one of the reasons they become irrelevant, in fact, the key reason they become irrelevant is because they're retarded. Megyn Kelly is a beautiful example of this, So Megyn Kelly is currently in the populist fear-mongering about AI. So there is a branch of people right now who are so terrified about AI because they watched Terminator 2. And they think they're just AI, it's gonna nuke all of us. And so it's created this weird Luddite faction that is also very Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, Tucker, and Megyn are all holding hands on this, where they believe that what we have to do is stop technology, which we've never done in human history ever. We need to stop technology, halt. Because if we stop it, then everything will be fine. And that's never worked ever, once. It's never, ever, 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 ever worked. So anyway, it leads to people being really crazy about things that are genuinely fine. So the Megyn Kelly example. On April the 30th, Megyn freaked out. And she quote tweeted something. So there was some kind of update on AI that was posted onto social media. This is what Megyn wrote about it. Quote, "The AI advances are all great until there are no jobs left for our kids and our medical info is all over the internet and a chat box manages to release a nuke." And then she says, watch the AI documentary on Apple for a primer. What good is it to cure all disease if there is no more work, ambition, or safety? Okay. What she is quote tweeting, is it about automated cars? Is it about AI stealing jobs? It is a post from the Mayo Clinic announcing that an AI model has now helped specialists detect pancreatic cancer on routine CT scans up to 3 years before a person can be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. It identifies subtle signs of the disease that humans don't normally detect before the tumors are visible, when curative treatment may prevent it altogether. In case you're wondering, we might have actually definitively found a cure, with regular CT scans are brought up, for pancreatic cancer if you catch it before it metastasizes and kind of reaches the stage of tumor growth. That's huge. That's what Megyn Kelly decided to freak out about. Oh man, AI is going to take all of our jobs quick. It's going to get the nukes. It's going to kill everyone. So we have to stop everything. There's this elitist idea that they really care about you, but also the things that you would directly benefit from. Again, those of you who are suffering from cancer, they're just going to say, oh, I'm going to, obstruct this because, well, I'm actually afraid for your jobs. It's that kind of retarded stuff that people don't buy into. They ostracize themselves is the point that I'm making, because people look at that and go, you used to be someone I respected. And I see this from a lot of comments, by the way, that are like, I used to respect Tucker. I used to respect Megyn Kelly. I used to respect whatever. And then they just got nuts. And once you go nuts, my dude, Planners has you in the sorted nut tin. You ain't getting out. So that said, a very kind $10 super chat from Rebecca Blizzard says, Tony, I'm glad I found you quite by accident. I also love the way that you pop off verses that are apropos to what you're talking about. Thank you so much. That's very, very kind of you. I appreciate it. I realize this show is absolutely not for everybody, but I'm going to try to be as transparent and just me as possible. First of all, because I don't think I have the ability to keep track of other things that I'm portraying. And also, I don't know, I figure this is working for growth so far, so why stop? So I'll answer one more and then we'll call it a nice night here at the end. Also a very kind $2 super chat from Patricia Clampett. Very, very kind of you. Last question. This is not going to make you happy, but I will answer it because I promise to be transparent. It's from Reagan Dog 9734. Why is the Trump administration continuing to allow chemtrail and weather manipulation? Couple of things can be true at once here. First of all, yes, we've messed around with weather manipulation. We absolutely have. You should know something, though, about weather manipulation from a former science teacher who studied weather science quite a bit. It takes a metric holy crap ton of the stuff to actually alter the weather. It takes a ton of the stuff. And by the way, our success rate for actually altering things is wildly low. So you can dump metric absolute boatloads in cloud seeding. It does not always work. In fact, it has a pretty low success rate. And number two, my personal favorite on the number 2 side here, it takes weeks of stockpiling and very specific kinds of planes to actually carry this out. Why do I say this? The idea that all of the commercial airliners, which leave contrails, again, that's just evaporation. It's literally it is just steam. It is. And I say, how do we know this? Because we have the same photos from the 70s and the 80s that are they're the same. The idea that American Airlines and Spirit Airlines was secretly in magical, cahoots. Guys, don't you think that if the Trump administration was controlling the freaking weather, that Trump would be building good weather over his supporters? Farmers kind of need to have a good year with the economy right now, boys and girls. You kind of need a real slam dunk year. You don't think that they would try seeding the weather with the magical... Again, have you seen the people that are working at TSA? Have you seen the people that are working at air traffic control? You think those are the masterminds that are keeping a conspiracy that actually before every American Airlines flight, they're loading trace, chemical element thing? Guys, it's not how it works. It's not how it works. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm sorry. The same people who are making AI Instagram garbage videos that are trying to convince you that, actually, all of the weather is manipulated so that Oprah can be buying up land in Nevada for the... Stop it. Stop it. Get some help. oh, you shouldn't have said that. Oh, you're really going to hurt some people. Maybe they really believe in it. Well, they're really believing in something that is not true. Well, Alex Jones proved it. After all, cloud seeding is real. Yeah, it's real. I just told you it was real. Guys, it takes so much. And I say this like as a pilot who has watched. Ask a freaking crop duster how much of that stuff it takes to do their regular job. And there are other aerosols. Ask like firefighters, those who have done plane firefighting. It takes a lot. Don't do this. There's other things to deal with, like, hanging the people who knew that the COVID-19 not vaccine, because it was an mRNA manipulation mechanism to trick your immune system into skipping steps and making antibodies without actually knowing what it was making them for or why, without any T-cell secondary protein activation sequences. Those people need to be hanged knowing that they caused myocarditis. That's a real thing. It's verified. It's documented. We have it. Saying that the clouds look different. Stop it. Get some help. Okay? Again, always going to try to be pretty honest with you on that stuff. Always and forever. Also, I'm sorry, I can't help. There's just one other final thing. The idea that we're finding huge elements of silver oxide everywhere, that has been debunked 415 freaking times. And you say, Tony, how do you know that? I've got a weather station on top of the studio, and I, as a former science teacher, test the rain for stuff. Why? Because I'm a big freaking nerd. And there's no silver oxide in any of it. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you, but I'm not going to lie to you. So that all said, you have an excellent weekend. We're going to be back Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, for more fun and good cahoots. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.